Oh, I better use it. Hi, everybody. Hi. Hey, thanks for having me, first off. This is really awesome to be up here with everybody. So a little bit about me is what you're asking?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. I guess I'll say there are two companies that I'm spearheading. One is Televisa, which is, I'm the Chief Creative Officer for Televisa USA, which is basically the US studio arm of Grupo Televisa, which is the biggest media company in the Spanish language world. That's really all about doing television and film. We have a film studio as well, which is partnered with Lionsgate, and so there's that aspect of my life. And then I've carved out of that whole thing my own personal company, which is White Crown Media, which I've derived the name from ancient Egyptian mysticism. I've spent many years and my life's work basically in the practice of Egyptian mysticism and as an initiate in the mysteries. And so I've created this company, which I'm the president of, which is essentially to do transformational entertainment, which is the other thing that I am very interested in. And so the projects in that company are a bit different than the ones that are in Televisa, but I like to think, and I think maybe what we'll talk about through the course of the panel is how those things are actually very much the same. In my mind, I have I think a clear perspective, and it may be a slightly different perspective than others about what transformational content is. So thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Holly Mosher, and I call myself Filmmaker for Change. I was always very political in high school, and then went to film school not knowing you could actually do film for a career, because I'm from Milwaukee, and that didn't cross my mind. But, and at first I just got experience, and I produced commercials and worked on fiction feature films. And then out of the worst job ever, where everything that could go wrong on a project went wrong, I started therapy and realized that I could only work on projects that had meaning to me, or I was going to do something else. So it's been about 10 years now where I made that, I hit 30 and I hit the wall, and I was like, it's that or nothing, or I'm doing something else. So since then, I think I've worked on about 7 documentaries, and just much happier, although overworked still.
At least for girls. So my name is Betsy Chasse. I'm a film director and producer, and I own a distribution company called Intention Media. I made the film What the Bleep Do We Know? And and I'm currently shooting another documentary called Creativity, and I'm in pre-production on a new film called Killing Buddha, which is a narrative comedy, so don't anybody freak out. Or Buddha at all. It's okay. Yeah, so I kind of did the same thing that you did. I used to produce porn and horror movies. Come on. It's true. And then randomly out of the abyss got hired to produce and direct What the Bleep Do We Know, which was completely random. Porn bleep. So then so Killing Buddha is basically that story. It's the story of what happens when the least spiritual person on the planet gets hired to make a movie about spirituality. So that's what I'm doing.
It's hard to follow porn. I know it's not time for questions, but where can we get this?
I actually made the first spiritual porn.
You made spiritual porn? Really? I'm going to give her back the mic.
I took 2 big porn stars and sent them on a spiritual journey. Yeah. So I did that.
Well, I happen to think it's all a spiritual journey. I don't think you can separate out a porn star from, forgive me, a studio executive. So that's me. I did a lot of stuff there, corrupting the youth. And Jim Carrey talked out his ass at Ace Ventura. Eddie Murphy dons a fat suit, etc. The guy gets all the stuff that culture promises and finds it neutral, hits himself on the head, or gets the universe hits him on the head and knocks him into his heart. So then I am and produce happy, and I'm happy to be.
Okay, so this is going to be fun, right? This is a fun panel. I'm very psyched. Finally, after all these years, I'm on a panel, a dream panel. Okay, so let's talk about what is mindful media, or what are you calling it, transformational entertainment or conscious content? What is this? What is a good name for this genre, and what does it mean? What is the definition of this genre? Who wants to go first?
Go
for it, Tom.
You ready, Tom? You ready? Come on. You're the pioneer.
Are you Egyptian?
I'm not. I wish.
Oh. I'm Lebanese.
You're
I'm
Lebanese,
looking. I
yeah.
heard there were 2 Arabs in show business. I'm one. I thought maybe.
Garcia.
Okay. So, all right. I'll start out be controversial because I think we need a new term. I looked at, there was a couple questions that you had written down when you recruited us, and one was, what is mindful media, or what does it mean to you? And it's neutral, because mindful, when you look up mindful, it says to be conscious or aware of, and then there's a blank. So conscious or aware of what? You could be conscious or aware of making billions of dollars and being the hippest, coolest thing ever, but conscious or aware of what? So mindful, I don't know. And conscious of what? So I approach everything through a simple question of who am I? And if I know who I am, I like the word integrity, so maybe we're moving close to a term. Maybe we'll come up with it tonight. Who knows? I know it needs to be sexy. No accident, I'm sitting next to a former porn queen. Can I call you that? I know it needs to be sexy and sexier than what's happening right now, and I think the truth is always sexier. And the truth is that this stuff changes your life, right? It makes you alive. It makes your eyes beam with meaning and purpose, and your life have joy and beauty. So it is sexier, and I think we need something sexier. And as long as our titles float, as in mindfulness and consciousness, and I think people kind of say, nah, give me the guy that's kicking the ass of somebody, and we need more grit and grounding to it. And I don't know what that is, but anyway, with that, I'll kindly leave.
I had the same feeling when you said mindful and conscious. I mean, I've spent the last 10 years distributing and seeing documentaries after the BLEEP came out that really, were all, in my opinion, great, wonderful films, but it felt like we were just kind of all marching, being really repetitive and marching in a direction. And I find that for me, what means mindful or conscious is that when I get really excited about a subject and I become really passionate about exploring it, that to me that's mindful, because I just want to share that what I've learned, and that I think is when really hopefully good films come, is when people get really excited about the subject matter that they're doing and get really immersed in it and become passionate about it, and that then is what's mindful, whether it's about business or economies or creativity or porn. I make really good porn.
We're not going to get away from that one.
Sorry, Kay. I can't help
The
myself.
subtitle of this panel is now going to be like,
We're making spiritual porn, really.
Yeah, it's true.
It's interesting because, seeing your video, you said the mind, the body, the spirit, the soul. And I had the biggest compliment when somebody told me I shot with my heart and my mind. And I just happened to be reading 2 books now that I picked up the other day, and it was about we're not our mind, we're not our body. And actually in the first documentary I did in Brazil that was called Hummingbird, and it was 2 groups that worked with street kids and women suffering domestic violence. And they said you can't get there through just the therapy, you also have to get there through the body. And I think we're at this new place, we have to incorporate the whole person. And so I don't know what the term is either. I'm not a word person, like putting a title on anything. I'm like, it's the idea that gets me excited. So whatever the word is, I'll call it all of them. But just that we're bringing this idea of and I call it, positive change, not just change, but positive change. but it's a good, interesting conversation.
I don't know what to call this. I don't. I mean, I was going to say transformational, but I'm like, oh wait, but Tom just said that it's mindful blank. I'm like, transformational what? Transforming better? Transforming worse? Like, what is the... I always kind of leaned on transformational because I tend to always think, oh well, it's stuff that, it's entertainment that somehow causes you to think about things in a different way. It causes you to open up, go into your heart. I mean, that's essentially what we're trying to do. I don't know whether, do we have to have a name for it? Is it really important?
Well,
I mean,
For branding.
yeah, right, for branding. So, no, it's true. I've grappled with this for a long time. Inspirational is a great word. Part of the reason why Synergy TV came to me in a download, and literally because it is it means the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And mathematically that doesn't make sense. So it is about there being a greater being and power to all of the mind, body, all the different pieces. Like, it's holistic, right? So, but it is fascinating because this is an area and a genre that hasn't really been defined, that I think it's partly what Hollywood deals with in terms of marketing too.
all right, give me the mic. This is going to sound totally retarded. But I was just thinking, it's almost like the identification movement, and I'll tell you why I say that. Because everybody on Earth has basically the same question: what the hell is wrong with me? Right? Like, why am I so petty? Or why do I have these thoughts? Or why am I, all of these things? What's wrong with me? And I actually think the answer is what the problem is who you say you are. Are you identified as your lower nature? Are you identified as the image and likeness of God, as your higher self, as that higher energy that's pouring through you? I was thinking about I Am, and how you did a lot of great work in there about sort of looking at nature and how animals behave, and what's sort of instinctual to the body and to the primate side of ourselves, and that side that just wants to eat and procreate and shelter itself is essentially the part that is the ego that's connected to all the things that are causing all this separation, whereas there's another part of us which is the identification question. Like, well, if I identify myself as something higher than that, if I actually utilize my intelligence or the faculty that's been gifted to man specifically, then I'm putting myself in a whole other realm, a whole other conversation that's not based on the primate instincts and all of those lower things. So that's why I'm coming to this idea of maybe it's sort of an identification question or an identification conversation.
When we made the BLEEP, people asked all the time, well, is it a documentary or is it a narrative? Is it a self-help book or should it go in the science section? And there was a lot of frustration, and we really decided to make a film that was all of those things, and it seemed to do just fine. And it really spoke to people who were really passionate about science and people who were really passionate about, spirituality. And I think that one of the things that I'm trying to do in my own filmmaking process is get away from having to, I own a distribution company. I'm very big on, figuring out who the market is. But I think that that's different than having to brand myself as a specific type of film. And I think, especially now, because the minute you, thank you. It's sorry, it's just a little shaky. I think that, especially in terms of if people are here thinking about making a spiritual film or making a film in the genre, I'm going to be really bold and say I think that genre is dead. And, I spend a lot of time seeing films. I've probably seen 100 movies this year that have science interviews, I call them talking head documentaries. And, with all due respect, they're great little movies, but they're all ending up for free online because it's been hit over the head. And it's really time, I think, to be innovative again. And that's why I'm doing my film Creativity. It's about, what is it that we can do? And so in terms of labels, I don't want to put a name on it because then it feels like it becomes really limiting and stifling to me creatively. So there you go. Sorry about the mic, guys. It is a little funky. But so then, since you're all filmmakers, what do you think needs to go into a film that you would, let's not label it, but that you would say has an inspirational effect or transformational effect? What is the criterion that you think needs to be met?
And what is the ideal effect of a movie that is bringing positive messages to people? What do you want the audience to experience?
I think there are two parts to the movie which are really important, or to the anything that we actually, this is true for anything. And one part is context and one part is content. So you can kind of think about it like a garden, right? So the context is what's holding the seeds that are going to become the flowers, and that soil has to be fertile, it has to be watered, it has to be taken care of. And I think in the creative process, like, you can only grow what will grow out of your soil. So it's really tremendously important how we make the movies that we make, how we make the shows we make, how we deal with each other. I mean, all of those things are super important. And that in and of itself is transformational. I remember when I was at HBO for years, I've talked to hundreds of people, it would seem like, on a production. And if I could just be like just a little light or a lot of light for one person or two people, it's like that ends up over time it multiplies and you end up having a really positive effect on a large mass consciousness. And that's just about how one is being. The content is a slightly different thing because, there are certain things that I'm interested in. I'm doing this project with Dr. Judith Orloff, who's a psychiatrist, and Alan Watts or Edgar Casey. Like, all of these things are things that I find personally interesting. But I'll say that the content, my view on content, and maybe this is good fodder for discussion, is that I'm kind of old school with the transformational thing. It's not so much like talking heads and imparting information. Because of my background studying Egyptian mysticism and mythology, there's an original metaphor that is pervasive throughout the whole world. And if you can identify, it's in all these movies that we're doing right now in Hollywood. And they're ones that you wouldn't expect. I mean, everything from Cars to, The Natural to The Matrix to, the Adjustment Bureau is the first Aquarian Age movie in my book. And you can really break it down. If you look at the story that's being told, it's a teaching metaphor about the ascension of the soul. And it's an old story that's completely been passed down intact from ancient times. So I feel like, in a way, part of what Hollywood is doing really well is that it's making movies that have teaching metaphors in them, and the people that make them don't even know it. That's the thing that kills me. It's like, maybe conscious media is actually the people being conscious of the fact they're doing it. I remember, like a great transformational movie in my book was The Dark Knight. And it's like, people go, this movie is so dark, but that is a perfect story about the ego trying to take down the soul. And it's just like textbook. But if you talk to, as I did, I talked to David Goyer, I was like, well, where did this come from? And he's like, I don't know. It wasn't a thing that he was really conscious of, but I think as channels are downloading all this stuff, and maybe that's something we can talk about more, but just the way that the movies and the things that I'm interested in and the TV shows I'm interested in have teaching metaphors in them, but sometimes they're very deeply under the surface. And that, to me, is like a perfect blend, because it's entertaining when you watch it, but it comes away and it has an effect on you. So.
I think that the most important element to a film is that I remember that I'm making a film that's entertainment. That's the first thing I'm doing. My company's motto is, or our mission statement is, purposeful entertainment, achieving global change. And so every film that I make has to have a story, and I had to remember that we're humans and we feel and we experience. And so, if you look at, the best example would be The BLEEP, because I think most people have seen it. There was a story in that movie, and we put a story there so that the audience would have an emotional experience, because that's how we work, pretty much, that's how we learn. If you look at The BLEEP, or any film that you can go and see that I've done, they're funny, they're silly, they don't take themselves too seriously. We have people dancing around with IV stands with their emotional addictions in the middle of it. It's a Busby Berkeley dance number in the middle of The BLEEP, and so it's about having that emotional experience. So that's, for me, the first thing that I look for in any story that I'm going to tell, whether it's a straight documentary like the film I'm doing now, or a narrative, or some sort of hybrid. It's really about telling a story to me.
Yeah, I think, we can talk Hollywood and studio, but even the best Hollywood movies that everybody loves and keeps hoping and going to the theater hoping they're going to see has a catharsis of a character, and that's, you know, that's what we're all striving to make, those ones that stick with you and speak to everybody. So I think that, you know, it can be done in the Hollywood style, or it can be done in an independent way. And, you know, those are the ones that are the blockbusters because they speak to everybody. And there's just a central humanity and commonality to every story, and that one character's journey that overcomes something.
Yeah, I have much and nothing to say on this. I'll try without the mic. I teach storytelling at Pepperdine University, so I talk to a lot of kids about storytelling. And I always tell them that the most powerful story they'll ever tell is the one they'll tell with their lives. So I think as quote-unquote filmmakers who wish to make a difference in the world, I believe our lives must reflect it, because the culture already senses on an energetic level, I can't hear what you're saying over all that you're doing. So I think our lives have to get in a line with whatever love or beauty or truth or challenge we show. So for me, all great stories are about one idea. One idea. And it's called the controlling idea if we narrow it down and break it down like a Sid Field screenwriting book. So there's a controlling idea that I either respond to or don't respond to, and that tells me whether I'm going to make the movie or not. So love conquers all, the truth will set you free. Whatever that controlling idea is that I can get behind and be passionate about, that's whether or not I'm going to make the movie. And it's always about entertainment. Entertainment simply means to entertain someone is to hold their attention, right? It's no accident that we all were held in attention by your story, because you came out of something that our culture's been denying for years. Sexuality, pornography, and we already know that instinctively, so we're so drawn, even though it's what we call a dark side, it's a side we don't want to face. So you've got our attention, right? Entertainment is to hold someone's attention, and then what you do with it is everything. So that's where that controlling idea comes back. I believe in humor myself, because it's a very brilliantly evolved behavior that our species has, because it makes you vulnerable. So I've made people laugh, and I've watched comics make people laugh, 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 and then you get in an idea at the end, and it sinks in because humor hits you in the gut, you're vulnerable, and it's a seed that's planted and has a chance of sprouting. So that's it. And more, and less.
Awesome. I think it's